Hello and welcome to the Rat Nest Podcast, episode 79 or 80. We're not sure. With Chris Tsagakis.
Yay! Thanks for being with us today, man. We really appreciate you cutting some time out of your busy schedule for us.
For sure, man. Glad to be here.
For those of you that don't know, Chris is the drummer of my favorite band and an amazing artist and a owner of a record label, and just he basically does everything that I always wanted to do. So yeah, you're an amazing dude. Stoked to have you on.
Thank you.
Dude, so yeah, let's jump right into it.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go. We met, we were talking about this earlier, maybe a decade or so ago. You were nice enough to grace our presence as teenagers at a pizza place where we were throwing art shows at, music shows, and
shout out Maxwell's.
And and then it was kind of a lull for the groups I think that you're involved with at the time, and you were doing your own thing, and you drove a couple hours to play at a little pizza shop and hang out with some kids. It was awesome, man. As weird as that sounds.
Yeah, no, I remember that. Who else played that night?
That was Happy Body, Slow Brain, and
That's
us,
right.
and What Hands Are For.
Yeah, we later on toured with Happy Body. I think that might have been the first time I ever saw them. Matt Fozzy.
They were rad, man. They really put something together with that band for sure.
Yeah, they were really cool. And I mean, Matt Fozzy is an amazing musician. He was in Facing New York, and like he did Happy Body. He did like a bunch of different projects, and he ended up later on playing bass for us. Thinking like 2 years ago or so.
Oh, right.
No, it was actually only a year ago. It was last June, I think.
Yeah, I saw you guys with him on that last tour.
Yeah,
in Anaheim, or maybe the Music Box in San Diego is where I saw you guys last, and he was playing with you guys.
yeah, that probably was. It sounds familiar.
Dude, speaking of throwing back Facing New York, though, so one of the first shows I saw you guys play ever was at Chain Reaction. That was kind of like the hometown small indie punk bar, all ages, all days of the week. One of the last ones that I think kind of exists to that capacity still.
At least around here, yeah.
And, a Southern California legendary venue. But yeah, I saw you guys, and Facing New York opened up for you, and that was the first time I'd ever seen them play. And it kind of sparked something in my own life where I would go on to kind of work with them in a sense of they would play shows in San Bernardino. I would like give them t-shirts from the shitty like designs that I would make and call it this company. And even like 5-1 Inc., like the record label with like Kinji and stuff that they were a part of, that got me some illustration gigs at a young age. It was like you never know what's going to open up when you just go see a band. It's weird.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that was like, I mean, that was a cool scene. And Chain Reaction wasn't always our favorite venue because not the greatest sound. I mean, I know they like upgraded over the years, but it wasn't like the greatest place to play. It didn't have a great stage or great sound system, but there was definitely like a scene there, like an organic scene where you could see lots of bands that ended up, musicians that ended up going on to do bigger and better things. It was a cool spot.
Yeah, and being in the crowd at a show at Chain Reaction there was a whole different vibe there. It was all love. Everyone would pick everybody up. You could get as crazy as you wanted, and nobody would try and fight you or anything. It was just always a good time.
Yeah, no, and I guess that was definitely a good thing. I've never been in the crowd at Chain Reaction, but the crowd was always great. So, but I mean, that is definitely like, from the perspective, I've been to lots of shows, and from that perspective, like as a show goer, like being in a place where you feel comfortable and like it's good to see the bands, like I think is a huge important thing, so.
When was the last time you went to a show and like were down in the pit and in the crowd?
I don't know, like, because
don't mean to call you out. My bad.
No, I mean it probably was like 20 years ago or so, because like now I've seen my fill of shows like while we're on tour. Like I think like the last time I like really got into something, I was like at we played the Reading and Leeds Festival in England, and
Yeah.
Skrillex was playing, and I'm not a Skrillex fan at all, but some of the people who were there, like friends of Joe, our bass player, were like saying, "Oh, you gotta see Skrillex, like he's the best." I was like, no way, Skrillex sucks. But we went to like the side stage and like watched, and I have to say, like it fully like grabbed me. Like it was so
Yes.
loud and so much bass, and it was so like intense that like I was sitting there with like all these like people, that like hangers on and people who were there in our backstage and hanging out and stuff, and we were all just like jumping up and down and like getting crazy. Like,
Yes.
I wasn't like in the crowd, but I think that's the closest I've been in a while.
That's
There's
awesome.
nothing like getting grabbed by that music, like, and it just puts you in a whole different place, like transports you into a whole different dimension, it feels like.
Yeah, once I saw him live, I was like, okay, I understand why people like this
Right.
like so much. Like people had played his music for me many times, and I was like, okay, it's just a bunch of like crazy weird noises and like a halftime beat, and it's well produced, it's intense and has like a lot going on, but it doesn't really grab me. But hearing it live, I was like, oh shit, I understand now like why like people are like obsessed with this.
For
Well,
sure.
to bring it full circle is like that's kind of I think what grabs a lot of people, and we'll get to art too, but just to wrap up like RX Bandits and like this band, because been a fan for a long time. It's like that your live show, it might not generate or like it not might not like strike everyone the same way on record, but if you go to a live show, it's like
Yeah.
you're hooked, you're in, you're part of it.
Yeah. Well, that was like always our goal. Like the bands that we always liked the most were the bands that blew you away live. Like we never thought like a record could like really like capture like what we were doing. It was like we want to like just make, blow people away on stage, and that's still like all we really like want to do. The record is kind of just capturing a moment in time, which is cool, but it's like nothing can replace what you do like in person, like so that was like that's always been our goal. And I think to some extent that's what we like most about the bands that we like to see or listen to,
Hell yeah. Well, that's always been my biggest like excitement about going to an RX show, is because it's better than listening to the CD. Like you never know what the experience is going to be like. And dude, it always tripped me out how there was never a silence. No matter what between songs, you've always got a little beat going. You've always got something going, or if you have to tune, the bass is going or Joe's going. Dude,
Yeah.
it's an amazing show to go to. I think, I don't mean to fanboy out, but you guys are probably the most underrated band that ever existed, in my opinion. Like you guys fucking
Yeah.
should
Thank you
have
very
been
much.
should have been way at the top. And I guess I have respect for the humility that you guys have to have had to stay as humble as you guys are, and still be able to sell out venues whenever you want, but stay like grounded and be willing to do a stupid little podcast like this. It's awesome to see, man.
No, I mean, we spent a lot of time doing it, like I don't know. I mean, nothing like came easy. So, but at the same time, it's like, we've been appreciative for everything that we've gotten. So it's just, I don't know. It's not like intentional humility or anything. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
We love doing it, and things have gone how they've gone, and we've always enjoyed doing it, and we're happy for wherever we're at. So,
Yeah, dude. You told me one time too, like, you didn't even really see yourself playing drums in this band. Like it was like a progression. Like, weren't you playing like a horn or something? And
yeah,
it's like, to get to the level where you're at now, where you're like a band's band, like a band that other musicians enjoy.
Yeah, the
it's
drummer
gotta be
that every drummer looks up to
insane,
in the scene.
dude.
I don't know about that.
Sorry, we're gonna stop showering you with compliments.
All right, let's get into the art. Let's get into the art. Sorry to make you feel uncomfortable, but we just had to see you blush a little bit.
It's all good.
But I was gonna ask on that point too. So you were playing horns like at a young age, or was that just like something you were trying at the time? And also, were you also drawing, painting, or doing anything like that when you were a kid?
Good segue. So, I mean, I was when I met the RX guys. I mean, it was basically just Matt and a bunch of other dudes who aren't in the band anymore. But I was playing horns because I had recently gotten into ska music, discovered like Really Big Fish and No Doubt and Save Ferris and all these bands, and like I wanted to play horns, but I had been playing drums for like a year or so before that, just like not seriously, but me and my brother were like jamming Metallica in the garage.
Yes.
My mom's boyfriend like moved to Japan and he had a drum kit and he couldn't take it with him, so he let me borrow it, and so me and my brother just learned how to play. My brother played guitar, I played drums, and we just learned how to play Metallica songs. But um, I started playing horns because I loved the horns in like ska bands. And then when I met the RX Bandits guys, like they were looking for horn players. They had a drummer, but I guess they didn't really like their drummer. And when I showed up the day to do an audition on trumpet, the drummer never showed up. And since I had been listening to the songs and I knew them, they were like, "Well, if you play drums, can you just play drums, like, so we can at least like have auditions?" And they thought I was a better drummer than their drummer, so they're like, "Are you down to just play drums?" So that's how it all.
Dude,
I mean,
talk about a series of like serendipitous events, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you hadn't have even like gotten into ska, who knows what would have happened?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I was always gonna end up on drums because like even now it's like I've never gotten great at any other instrument. Like nothing else like comes naturally to me. Like drums are like easy for me. So I think it was just like one of those things. Like I think no matter where I tried to go, I was gonna probably end up back at drums anyway.
That makes,
So,
I mean, it makes sense. When you have a talent like that, you shouldn't waste it. Anyway, did you find, I'm going to throw those ugly little quips in here the entire time and make you feel uncomfortable. Sorry.
it's all good.
Did you find kind of transitioning over to do your technology stuff and making electronic drums, was there like a curve that you kind of had to get over, or like a learning gap that you had to like that you weren't expecting from being a drummer and then having to make electronic drums or wanting to make electronic drums?
Not really, but I do find that like I'm not as like creative with electronic drums. Like I like the sound of electronic drums. I like the like heavy hitting, like it's very like percussive. And I mean I like all kinds of music and I love like dance music and stuff. Like it's like I like I don't know, just the feeling, like you can feel it, like it's really heavy, it really like hits you. And I feel like even like live drums, like I have a hard time like getting to that spot,
Sure,
live drums
yeah.
are more of like a collaborative thing. Um, but I have a hard time getting like creative with electronic drums. It's like with live drums, it's like, I don't know, like I just don't even think about it. I just start doing stuff and it just, like my limbs are working at the same time as my brain and it just like happens. So it's like I'm able, I don't know, it's similar. I don't know. I like come back to like art. Like I feel like some of my best art is where I'm not thinking about it. Like I'm just going and I'm just starting brush strokes, or I'm just like thinking of colors and putting them down or whatever. Like I feel like my best work is when I'm not thinking too much about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Electronic drums is like you have to think, like you have to like it's all on a grid, you're planning it all out. Live drums is more like you're just going, you're not thinking about it. So
In the moment, like in the zone, yeah.
yeah.
With the art, when you're talking about painting, just in case people listening don't know that you also do paint, and a lot of the stuff that you've been working on recently, and I'd say recently in the last few years, has been a lot stencil based of artwork.
Yeah.
But what else do you paint that you don't go in with the intention of painting that? Because a lot of your work, I mean, obviously has to be planned out, right?
Well, so even the stencil stuff isn't always like planned out. That's actually one of the things that I do like about it. Like it's very fast. Like I'm using all spray paint, so it's like you spray it down and it's dry within seconds. There's not really much room to, I don't know, like craft like with oils where you can like blend, within, you have like hours to like sit and blend stuff,
Right.
Like I cut stencils like kind of just as like ideas. I guess in a way it's similar to music, like in like sampling or something, like where you collect like on a sampler, collect a bunch of samples, and you don't necessarily know what you're going to do with all the samples. You just collect them all, and then you start messing around, you know. So I'll do a similar thing with the stencils. Is like I'll cut just a bunch of stencils, you know. If I'm just like, oh, I'm in the mood for a triangle, I'll cut like a big triangle, you know, or a palm tree or something, and then I'll just kind of like, you know, lay down like a base color, and then say, okay, you know, where do I want to go next, and you know, throw a shape in, and throw a tree in, whatever. Like some of it, like landscape stuff, is a little more planned out, but it's still kind of just like going on the fly, like trying to figure out piece, you know, stencil upon stencil, layer upon layer, like what looks good and what will look good, and just trying different stuff. Um, and I do actually like I have actually really liked the stencil stuff that I've done, like more than some of my like oil and acrylic stuff, because it's like it is almost kind of like a like jamming, you know, like in a band, like you'll just jam and it'll go piece by piece and you'll record, and it's like you can't actually go back and like change something, because once you've laid it all down, it's done.
Yeah.
You know, if you're like assuming you're recording your jam or whatever. But with the stencil stuff, I kind of do it the same way, where it's just like I'll lay down stencil after stencil, and then until it gets to a point where it's done, and it's just done. You know, like it's it's very difficult, and I have had some pieces where I've tried to go back and fix stuff, but something weird about spray paint and the way it layers over each other. Like I've tried to lay, you know, like pieces in to get them in, and be like, oh, you know, there's a little spot in there that's slightly like off, you know, where the stencil lets some paint through,
Mm-hmm.
or like you know, like something isn't right, and I'll try and fix it, but it's like you
Right.
see it, like you see this like stripe or this odd color, like it like you can't fix it. Basically, you just have to go layer after layer, and then once it's done, it's done. So it's like you're kind of stuck with what you were doing in that moment, because
Yeah.
it dries so fast. It's like I'll do a painting in like a half an hour, and it's like, and then it's done, and it just is what it is. But I
That,
feel like I end up liking, again, you know, similar with music. It's like I end up liking that stuff better than like stuff with like oils or acrylics, where I can go back and say like, I don't like the way the colors fade in that part, or I don't like the shape of this, you know, figure's face or something, and I go in and like fix it and spend all this hours like trying to like make it like look right. Like I feel like even with my oils, like I've done some oils too, where I just start painting, and like there's a lot of imperfections, a lot of like bad brush strokes and like spottiness and stuff like that. But I just get done with it, and I stand back and look at it, and I'm like, it's, you know, it's perfect just like that.
mhm.
And technically from like an art perspective, like someone actually like analyzing the art would say, you know, this is garbage, because there's just so much inconsistency in the technique. But idea wise, it's exactly what I wanted to do. So I feel like in general, like I operate better in that way,
Mhm.
just getting the idea out and not trying to perfect it necessarily, you know?
Yeah, I mean, overthinking, I'm a chronic overthinker. And so anytime I'm trying to create or make anything, whether it be art or music or whatever, I always have to make a point to where it's like, all right, it's done. I can no longer
Yeah.
fuck with it. I can't go back and manipulate it. And I'm the guy that intentionally like records everything on a different track so that I can go in and change and edit anything if I need to, because
Yeah.
I'm going to get meticulous and I want it to be how I want it to be. And then with all of that possibility, I could go on endlessly, and eventually I have to be like, nope, it's done. That's it. The way that it is, all the blemishes are there now. They're just part of it.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. Like if I give myself the room to overthink, I will. So it's like
And
I always find with music and art that it kind of just like it gets to a point where it's good, but from there it just gets worse and worse. So it's
Right.
like I have enjoyed doing the spray paint stuff lately, because it's like I know once I put all the layers on, I can't do anything else. I mean, technically I could, but it's like it's easy to just look at it and say it would be so much more difficult to fix this than to leave it as it is. And so, you know, it's done, you know.
for
Yep.
sure. Yeah, it's a. I'm the same way I think as Jim. Maybe not as bad of an overthinker as Jim, but definitely an overworker. Like I get to a point and the shit's perfect, and it's like, all right, I could just walk away from it and hate it, but it looks the best it's gonna look, or I could keep working on it and ruin the whole thing. And I've ruined so many paintings, dude, especially trying to work like with like oils and like watered down acrylics and stuff. It gets so muddy and gray and like everything that you don't want to look at, and you're like, I just ruined this bright painting that was slightly not the best, but it would have been way better than what it is now. And it's a struggle for sure. But yeah, it's funny, man, because when we were first doing the art shows and stuff back in the day in San Bernardino, you brought block prints, and I didn't even know that you were creating stuff like at that point. Like you had some these prints that you did. They're just like little 5x7s, like framed up.
Yeah.
And I think Daniel, our buddy, still has one. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, I didn't even know you did art at that point. So was there like a natural progression to that? Like what did you first start messing with, and then when did you start focusing on the spray painting?
Well, the block printing was like really fun. I wanted to get back into that, but that was kind of just like a little like whim for a while. But I mean, I did art all through my childhood. My dad taught me to draw like Disney characters, Mickey Mouse and stuff when I was like 5 years old. In high school, I got into like comics and stuff, and like I had a couple other artist friends, and we all thought that we were going to be like cartoonists and like professional illustrators and stuff, and it didn't happen for any of us. But but I kept doing it just like as like hobby, and then I think probably around 20 or 21 years old, I got some like oil paints. Actually, I think it was acrylics. I think I got oils later, but I never got into painting because I was raised like pretty poor, and like the idea that I'd have to spend like 10, 20, $30 on one canvas, and then up to like 30, 40, $50 on enough paints, and then even more on brushes just to do one piece of art, like sounded absolutely insane to me.
Sure.
Whereas like I could buy like an entire pad of drawing paper and some like nice pens and maybe even some markers for like half that much and do a ton of different pieces of art, So it was like it sounded like painting. The whole idea of painting sounded like a rich person's art form or something to me.
Yeah.
So like, but I think it was for some like my 19th or 20th birthday. My mom like bought me like a canvas and a bunch of paints and brushes, and I did my first painting. Actually, I have my first painting because my mom moved recently.
Shut up. You have it right by you. Can we see it?
Yeah,
Yes.
I actually do have it.
Yes.
This rules.
I didn't even think about it, but I do have it.
That's your first painting. Is that how you're 18, 19, you said?
Yeah, something like that. I don't think I dated it. No, I didn't.
It's in really good condition.
No, I did. 99.
That's in really good condition for being 25 years old.
So it was an Entertainment Weekly cover. Like I didn't know what to paint. So I was just like, I'm gonna do like a pop culture kind of like painting. And I took one of my mom's Entertainment Weekly. This is Susan Sarandon and Julia Roberts.
Oh man, you captured Julia.
Dang, that classic cover.
Oh my God. Now that you say it, I can see both of them. Yeah. That's so wild, bro.
And then up here, like it was something like 25, amazing women in film or something. Like I think this is like Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and I think this is like Michelle Pfeiffer. I don't remember who else was on it, but that was like my very first. Like I was trying to do kind of like
dive into it, dude. And that's actually what is it? That's like a 16 by 20 or 18. What is that? That's pretty good size.
It is pretty. Yeah, I think it's. Should say on it, but yeah, I think. I don't know.
That's funny, man.
It's bigger, but yeah.
Then you were hooked from the start with Julia and Susan. You were hooked.
Yeah, I mean, I like enjoyed it, and I thought like I thought it was pretty good, and my mom thought it was good, and so I was just like, now I have like some tubes of paint and some brushes. Like maybe I'll just try and like buy a canvas here and there and start doing stuff. And I don't know. I don't think I did that much more. I think I did maybe like 5 or 6 paintings over the next few years, like not a ton.
Mm-hmm.
But once I kind of like moved out of my parents' place and like became like an adult and like had a job, was earning money and stuff, I started buying more canvases and just painting, just for fun. And then I stuck mostly with I think that one was acrylic. I think I did mostly acrylic. Again, like oil was a whole other like field to move to because it was like
Oh
oil
yeah.
paints are like 2 or 3 times the price of like acrylics. And I just felt like, like, is it really that much better? But I think the comparison that I also found in music that I think is similar is like digital versus analog is it's like the truth is like you can do basically the same things with either medium, but at the end of the day there's some stuff you can do with analog you can't do with digital. There's like a color, there's a like an unintentional like depth to it that
Hmm.
can't be recreated with digital, just like with oils, like you can do. And I even did with I had some paintings, I don't remember, I don't know if I even have them anymore, but where I was using like acrylics and like palette knives and stuff and just slathering like thick gobs of like paint, like trying to recreate this texture of like oil paints. But once I finally got some oils, I was like, oh, this is what it's, I understand why people like this so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I was super intimidated because I always painted in acrylics too, and then I had a buddy that I went and stayed with him in Chicago for a couple weeks, and he kind of broke down oils for me, or at least how he does them, and
Mhm.
it took some of the like fear of trying it out away because you think oils, you
Yeah.
think like all these old masters and like these really refined, smooth paintings, but there is
Yeah.
something to it. It's just a little different feel, maybe a little more warmth, like you said, like analog and digital. It's like, yeah, there's always a little more warmth in analog or whatever, like
Yeah.
and that is kind of like oil in a nutshell, I think. But once you start playing
Yeah.
with it takes some of the intimidation away. You're like, oh, okay, you could do stuff you could do with acrylic. It's not that much different. Paint still lasts a long time, even though it's a little more expensive. It's like a little bit
Yeah.
goes a long way.
Yeah. No, I mean, I enjoyed it for a long time, and like I still, I don't know, like I want, like the problem is like in recent years, it's like I've had a couple kids, and
The
I am
problem
like,
is,
yeah, I had a couple kids, and I am like, as you were pointing out earlier, like I'm doing like a million different things in terms of like art and music, like because like to survive in like the music or art industry, I feel like you can't just be like, oh, I do this one thing really well. It's like you have to do like a ton of different things.
Yep,
So it's
diversify.
like it's my attention span has gotten really short, and my like the days of like sitting and working on like an oil painting for like 2 or 3 weeks,
hmm,
trying to like finish it is just I don't I don't have it in me anymore.
Yeah.
I might still maybe at some point when things slow down, but
it's funny, man.
That's rad that you still make time for yourself to make art like that, though. Being caught up in running businesses and being in such professional bands and stuff, like the fact that you still give yourself a moment, make yourself a painting, like that is commendable.
I mean, for me, like it's not an option to not like I think it like it comes at the price of like maybe not getting enough sleep or like maybe paying like a few bills late or like not having like milk in the fridge in the morning when the kids want some cereal or something like not that any of that stuff happens that often, but I feel like it like when I feel like I need to like make some art or I need to make some music, like I need to play drums, it's like I don't really feel like it's an option not to. It's more
Mhm.
just like I have to figure out where I can fit it in, that it'll do the least damage to the rest of my life. Because like it's just not, I don't know, it's maybe it's just pure like selfishness and ego, but it's like I I don't feel like I can live without doing these things. So
For
like I have to
sure.
figure out a way to fit them in.
Well, that kind of answers my next question was going to be kind of like what is your inspiration for when you sit down to like do an art piece or like just to start off, like where's your headspace at? Are you getting there to get away or to clear your mind, or are you like, oh hell yeah, I get a moment? But it sounds like it's a lot less about inspiration and more like opportunity to finally get some of this out that's already in you.
I mean, it's about both. Um, like when I have a moment, there's always like ideas and things like floating around in my head that I've been like wanting to get to. But then there's also times where like I just have like a craving to do something. Like lately I've been like, for some reason I've been really wanting to do like woodwork.
Tight.
So I've been doing like carving, and like I have like a Dremel, like the rotary tool, and
Hmm.
I've been doing like stuff like that. Like I've just been really wanting to like do like something like multi-dimensional. And so I've been just doing like trying to get around to doing those kinds of things. But again, that's a little more time consuming. So it's like it's it's something like that like nags at my brain. And so it's like if I'm like at Home Depot or something, it's like I'll just grab a piece of wood and then it'll just sit for like a couple weeks until I have some time, and then I'll just like start carving something out of it.
Yeah.
That's tight.
So
At least you're setting yourself up knowing like, oh, this is going to come. I'm just going to make
yeah,
sure that I'm ready for it when it does.
yeah,
I think that's most stuff. Like some at the brokest, like poorest parts of my life was when I had like canvases and wood and stuff in the garage. I was dumpster diving with. I was like, oh, I could paint on that. Like you just always have
Hell
stuff
yeah.
around because you're like, oh, I gotta create stuff because I gotta get my mind off bills or whatever.
Yeah,
the
man.
the stress is like. That's why I was pushing out like work, and now that I'm comfortable, I'm like, this sucks.
Now I can't even create nothing. Yeah.
Like, where's my mind at?
That's that starving artist though mentality. That's why everyone in their teens and early 20s goes through it. It's the time to be that like, all right, I'm just gonna push and throw everything in and see what sticks.
Hell yeah.
yeah.
So by the time you were in your early 20s, though, you were playing music with those guys. Was that right around when it started, around 99, 2000?
Yeah, I mean that's when the band started like really touring. I mean, I think our first tour was in '99. Um, and so yeah, I wasn't doing as much art for a while. I mean, I have like a few sketchbooks that are from tour from those days, and I'd show you some of that, but I have no idea. They're buried for sure. Um, but I like, I was at least like so that I could at least like get some of the art out. I'd do just sketchbook stuff, and then try and do like actual art pieces when I was at home. Um, and I don't know. I mean, I think in general, like it was a little slow until probably more like the late 2000s, um, where I started like actually like buying canvases again and actually painting and trying to like. I think that's probably around the same time that I started like an Etsy page too, because I think at the time like it was like I was trying to find places where I could like show my art, like restaurants or like anywhere local that I could like hang art. And of course, that was a like a lost cause. Like nobody buys art from a restaurant.
Fleeting dream, yeah.
But someone introduced me to Etsy. I think probably the late 2000, the 2000s somewhere in there. And I realized, oh, maybe I could actually like, if I can actually sell some art, then maybe it will help fuel itself and actually I can buy more art supplies so I can make more art and sell art. And so I think that sort of spurred it into like a bigger thing.
Did you ever have the thought of like, I'll see where this art goes? Like, did you ever want to be like, have a solo show or like do something, or was it always just kind of like, I'll make a piece here and there to like get more art supplies and make more paintings?
I did have one show in Seal Beach. They have a little art gallery on Main Street, and I forget her name. What a girl that Matt and Joe went to school with, or that lived in Seal Beach. I mean, we all went to school. We went to the same school, but someone they knew from Seal. She worked at the art gallery, and so they did a showing, and like a bunch of people came in. They had a big reception, and I think I sold like 2 pieces. And so like at that time, like I thought like, oh, maybe I could start doing stuff like this. Maybe I'd try and find other people and other galleries and do stuff like that. But it kind of just didn't end up happening.
Yeah.
Maybe it would have if I wasn't like on tour like 8 or 9 months out of the year. But um, but the experience of it was cool, and I thought that maybe it could turn into something more, but it just didn't.
Yeah.
Taking the opportunity to go.
I think the most growth I've had has been like on the internet, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I follow most of your endeavors on Instagram, and speaking of like just being so busy that you don't have time to do art, like headphone music, you put out basically a new song, it seems like every week there's something new coming out. Like you guys are busy with, and the bands are pushing hard right now, man. That has to take up a lot of time.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, I think with music too, like I do um kind of similar, like I try to like get it done like quickly, because oftentimes like what I do in the first couple days of like writing and recording is like the best thing I can make. It like only gets worse as I try to like perfect it and make it better. Um and I do have like I make music on my phone as well as like in my studio, and I also have like archives of music, stuff that I've made, from years ago. So it's like sometimes I'll take older stuff and put it out. But I don't know. At the end of the day, it's kind of just I don't know, kind of the same as with the art. It's like I just feel like I have to find a way to fit it in and do it. And luckily, like I feel like between the art and the music, like it is like for the most part like giving me like a living, at least, for now. Hopefully it keeps growing. So it's like if it's making enough to like perpetuate itself, then I keep doing it.
Oh yeah,
Oh
man.
yeah, man.
That's awesome. That's every artist's dream, is to make a living off of doing it. But then you start doing it and you realize how much work it is and how much time and effort you have to actually put into shit. And you're like you were saying earlier, like you thought you and your boys were all going to be like illustrators and comic book artists and cartoonists. And you're like, oh, this is what that takes. Like,
Yeah.
fuck this. You know, I'm out. Ooh.
Hey, so did you guys ever make a comic book?
I have like a few things in one of my old sketchbooks of like, where I did maybe like 5 to 10 pages of something.
Ideas and stuff.
My friend, like my best friend at the time, like I think he went on to like to some college, some art institute or something to study animation and stuff. And when he came back, he's like, dude, like I don't want to do this anymore. Like it's just repetition. It's just you just draw the same figures over and over again. like,
Yeah.
like he was saying about how like at that time it was before computer animation had totally taken over, and people were still hand drawing animation and stuff. And he was just like, dude, like supposedly if you want to actually be an animator and you go to like Disney or one of the other art studios, like you basically spend your first like 5, 6, 7 years just drawing like every 5 frames of someone else's like animations and stuff like that. And as you work up, you might draw more and more frames. And like after maybe like 10 years there, you might actually get to start actually creating characters and drawing things. Other than that, you're just copying other people's stuff.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't want to do that.
Hell no, that takes all the fun out of art right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the creative part is the fun part.
And you're just copying and tracing and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, dude. Yeah, the creativity process is like what's mind clearing about it. What, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I guess you could fall into a rhythm of like drawing and just tracing stuff and go zombie mode. But like the tranquility of like making something is where like your mind goes quiet and like you're not thinking about the bills or the day or anything. You're just like, oh, maybe I can add a little paint right here. Like it is super zen. Bob Ross like nailed it. He's the man, dude.
Dude, I put Bob Ross on all the time.
It's still good.
Like background TV. It's just like soothing.
Totally. I took it for granted when I was a kid, man. I've watched them all now. They have them on, I think, Hulu. I tear that shit up. Yeah. And then there was another one when I was a kid called The Cartoon Factory. And it was like an older gentleman with glasses, and he'd teach you like really kind of simple cartoons, but just the line quality and everything about it. He just really, really good at what he did. He probably worked for big names, Hanna-Barbera or something. But yeah, that was an OG one too at that same time that I remember watching.
Yeah, and I think that was like such a huge inspiration. I mean, like I said, like I grew up drawing like cartoon characters and comic book characters, and then like every once in a while you'd see some sort of special or some movie or documentary or something where they're showing an animator and they're just drawing out like this character, and it's just there's no mistakes, there's no sketching, or like they're just
Yeah.
able to
So
just
smooth.
draw the whole character in single lines, and then it's done. And I was just like blown away. I was just like, how did you draw this amazing, beautiful cartoon character like in seconds without hesitation? Like I was like, that's what I want to be able to do. Like I feel like I fell in love with like cartoon art like before anything else,
Yeah.
because I just loved like the expression of it, like it's a sort of like exaggeration of like reality, and done in like a way that's like pleasing to the eye.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can get away with
And I don't know,
anything in cartoons.
yeah, I guess the world of cartoons and comics is not as fun as it seemed, or at least by the late 90s, at least it wasn't. Maybe it was back in those like
The heydays
40s,
of it.
50s, 60s times, but
Yeah.
Now, we talked to a lot of comic book creators on here, and they all kind of have this like the same thought of like it's just panel after panel. Most of them we talk to do black and white specifically, so they don't have to just do panel after panel of color, throughout the entire book.
But yeah, it is grueling, and you don't think about that when you think of the format. You're like, it's cartoon, it's fun, it'll be fun to draw like that or whatever. But
well, and then you see a book like that's a 300 page or 200 page comic book that's full color, and you realize the amount of time and effort and energy that went into that just to be able to get that much content, let alone it be great.
Yeah, finishing, polishing it.
Yeah.
Now that you're a father, you got a couple kids. Like, do you geek out on cartoons, or do you like showing them artwork and stuff? Like, do you try to like influence them in that way?
Yeah, I mean a little bit. I mean, all kids like cartoons,
right?
Yeah, it's not
in
hard
general.
to get them to watch cartoons,
but some like certain ones, and with this generation like of YouTube videos and people just watching other adults unwrap things or like do stupid shit like that, like are they like into cartoons, or are they into like all that stuff?
They are. I mean, both of my kids like draw. I mean, my daughter's older, she's 12, and she like still like draws and does art on a consistent basis. My son is 7, so he's kind of at that age where it's like they like are nonstop movement, always wants to be doing something, and art, is a more like calm down, sit and concentrate kind of activity.
Right.
But they both do it, and I think I'm like a firm believer, and I don't know where I like heard this from or something, but like maybe it was even one of their teachers or something, but the idea that I truly believe is that like every person is like born an artist. Like it's one of the first things that all kids learn how to do. And like if you talk to like a kindergarten teacher or a preschool teacher, like they'll tell you like there's when you bust out like crayons and pencils and paper, like there's no kid who doesn't draw. Like every single kid will pick it up and start drawing. It's like the first most like primal way of like expression, that where they can actually get something out of their brain that they don't know how to like communicate. Like we're all born with it, but very few kids are like nurtured in that way. So it's like I feel like for our like household in general, like because I am constantly doing it anyway, and it's an easy thing to do with them, like they both do it probably more than most kids. But in general, like I think media in general, like like I'm always showing them like anything that I find cool, and I think they find it cool too. But at the same time, like they are still, their own people in their own generation, so they find their stuff cool too. You can't
not
totally
not
get
everything
away
dad
from that,
says
but
is cool. Yeah,
I'm trying to think of like like I think for a while like we watched like what did we watch? I don't know. I'll try and think of some of the stuff that we have, but we watched recently the new like Spider-Man movies, the animated ones, and those were really cool. Like, I mean, personally, like I think it's really cool to see the way they've kind of brought to life like comic animation in like a very like creative way, And I know that's all like, or I assume it's all digital art, but it's like definitely a cool adaptation of like the comic book style to a moving cartoon animation type, medium.
Absolutely. It doesn't look so smooth that it's not a Pixar movie, you know. It's
Yeah, exactly.
It still has like kind of a rough
the
edge
personality
to it.
of the comics, you know.
Yeah, I really like that I haven't seen the second one, but that first Spider-Verse movie is like the dopest one I've seen lately as far as animation goes, superhero stuff.
I think that speaks to like the tools that an artist has too, and it goes to music and art in general. Like as new technology and new tools come out, you try and use them and utilize them and hone them as best you can to make this best possible product with this. You know, like when Pro Tools came out, it changed the game. All of a sudden, analog was no more, and everything could be perfectly chopped up, and everything could be cut in and spliced. You know, and once you get to that point, you almost need to break it now. Like, okay, we figured out everything that it can do. Now let's break it down and make it more authentic with the tools that we have, rather than just pushing them everything to 10, you know?
Yeah, no. And then there's always the people that resist, and they're like, oh, I don't want to be like a part of that. And it's like actually the better way is to take it and use it to accomplish the same goals you were trying to accomplish with the old ways. But, you know, like just because it's new doesn't mean you have to abandon all the old things. It's like bring the old into the new, like make it better with the tools that you have now.
Adapt. But then again, all those traditionalists, if they hold out for 40 years or whatever, it always comes back around. You know, all those dudes from the 70s that were like, I'll never give up my analog. Now they've got $1 million studios still because everyone wants their shit done on tape.
I know. Like I watched something recently where Moby was talking about all these vintage drum machines that he has from like the 80s and stuff, or like even like as far back as the 60s. But I guess he bought a lot of them in the 80s and 80s and 90s. And apparently at that time, it's like everyone was like throwing out their drum machines, like because at that time it was like technology had gotten like electronic samplers, MPC and stuff like that. Like they'd gotten really, really good. So all these vintage drum machines, like everyone was like, fuck this, get rid of all this junk. And now those machines sell for like multiple thousands of dollars. Like, like he has like literally almost like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of drum machines that he bought in the like 90s, each one for like 10, $15 because at the time everyone was like throwing them out. They're like, we don't need these anymore.
Yeah.
But then it came back, the whole thing came back to where they realized, oh, that this sound is irreplaceable. You can't replace these analog drum machines that were made, you know, before all the digital revolution. Like
it's totally, and it's the same thing with like organs and synthesizers. It's like if you have the right equipment that you can't find anymore, if you have your hands on the right gear, there's sounds that they say, you know, that's the only place you're going to get that sound from, or that quality of sound from. It's pretty trippy.
And that's why I don't get rid of anything.
Neither does Jim.
Same.
That's his first rule, dude. He's like, I will never sell musical equipment ever again, because I've traded amps and guitars and flipped stuff like so many times as every musician does. And everything he buys, he keeps. Like,
through like 3 or 4 bands, I would buy new equipment and just hold on to it. I made myself a promise. Like I still have my first bass I ever got. I've got every acoustic a guitar I've ever had. Like, just there's no reason to get rid of it, because number one, I like playing it, but number two, what if it does? Like that shit'll never go out of style. You know, a guitar or musical musical instrument is never going to lose value unless I break it.
Yeah. Well, that was the lesson that I feel like I learned from like watching that, is that like even if the value goes down, it comes back up like twice as much.
Eventually,
like
Take the
it might
hit
go
now.
down, but it's gonna come back up because eventually it becomes irreplaceable. Like
absolutely, man. And I wish I had that kind of foresight though, like as a kid, to hold on to all of my Ninja Turtles and shit. You know what I mean? That somehow those are going to be vintage and collectors, you know, my Technodrome.
I know. I wish I had kept like some of that stuff. Like I know Matt's mom busted out like a bunch of like old like G.I. Joes and stuff from when Matt was a kid. Like a while ago when my daughter was a kid, because I used to bring her over there when we would like practice or have like band meetings and stuff, and she would let him play with these old toys, and it was like old like Happy Meal toys and shit like that.
Like the hamburger that transforms. Yeah.
Like it's just yeah, like flooded memories back, and I'm like, fuck, I wish I had like kept some of that shit. Like even just 1 out of 10 little toys or something,
Yeah.
just because it's like, again, like that stuff was never made again. It's like funny
Yeah.
to like see.
Dude, tell me the excitement that you felt when she busted out a box of GI Joes. Like you had to feel like you were 6 again, bro. I can still remember that box getting dumped out. Like, all right, I'm going with this one.
I mean, I was mesmerized for a minute because I was just like, dude, it was just, I don't know. It's weird the memories that from your childhood from that kind of stuff because it seems so like inconsequential at the time. Like it's
Yeah,
not like a
yeah.
life altering event like a certain GI Joe or certain toy that you have. It isn't like, it's not like remembering, oh, that horrible earthquake that happened or something like that. It's like, but it is important, but it's in a totally different way that I feel like you kind of forget later on when you become a teenager and you decide other things are much more important than those things.
Right.
But it
Right.
was weird like seeing stuff and being like, whoa, like these crazy memories coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it.
That shit is fun,
Love it.
dude. My mom just gave me 3 boxes that she had in closets or in the garage or wherever she had them, like 3 kind of like bins. And it was like high school yearbooks and notes from my junior high church camp and like all this like just stuff from my childhood and pictures like from picture day that you trade with
Yes.
people. And oh man, I was like, I wonder what Samantha's up to. Like, just like you start remembering people that you hadn't thought about in 30 years. You're like, damn, I wonder whatever happened to them. It is a trip.
Yeah.
The nostalgia
No, for sure.
it plays into it. And speaking of nostalgia, just like before we wrap up here, I want to mention your work a little bit more because it does have a very kind of old school feel to it. I've made some jokes on Instagram at you about being Tsagakis Hockney with like the pools and the palm trees and the kind of color saturations that you use and stuff with shadowing and whatnot. Is there a direct relation? Is that something that I'm just seeing in my head, or do you do stuff in a specific way because of other people or anything like that?
I mean, like there are some man, what is his name? I know I'm sure you guys know this guy, Joe Hiroshipi.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. He's a Japanese artist. I'll look it up later. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't
Go
know
ahead.
his name.
Yeah.
But like the stuff that I've done recently, like with the spray paint stuff, like I don't know what you would call it or what it's technically like influenced by, but like I really like the really like solid colors that are like super opaque and really like intense. And it's
Yeah.
almost ends up looking like some sort of like collage art. Like I like some of the like 60s stuff, like 60s animation like posters where it would just be like a woman smoking a cigarette or something,
Yeah.
and it's like a silhouette and like and then like a palm tree in the background or something, like the stuff that's just really like it's just you're focusing on just like the mood. It's like creating like an atmosphere and that's it. It's not necessarily about like brushstrokes and technical.
It's more
perfection or anything.
shape, color contrast, and like composition than it is technical. Like I know what you're talking about. Like maybe some of like French or even like travel posters from those eras of like the concert posters from the 60s.
like that,
where
that kind of stuff. And it's like I don't know. I mean, I don't know like how much it's necessarily nostalgia because I feel like a lot of it is before my time anyway. It's just more like channeling like a time where art was at least some art, like certain forms of art were like all about like creating some sort of like feeling rather than a story, like most of the stuff I'm doing now, it's like and actually I mean in general probably like most of my art throughout my life of doing art, like I've never necessarily been like trying to create a story. People look at like old like Van Gogh or like like these like famous paintings and they'll be like, oh, what's going on in this little girl's eyes or something. It's like what was this scene that they were painting. It's like I don't think I've really ever had a desire to like paint like a story. Like I just want to make like a vibe. Like I want something that gives you an instant like emotion, instant feeling. And I I like doing the spray paint stuff because it's just simple placement of colors, and just it communicates a feeling, and that's it.
Yes, being able to create this like a setting where anything in the observer's mind can go on, like that's a vibe right there. You know what I mean? Where you're just setting the place, and they're like, oh, I that reminds me of this, or I could do this, or whatever. Like that's a talent beyond just being able to paint a face or like an identical landscape.
It seems.
I mean, it's different strokes, and everything different, it's like I definitely admire, like, I mean, one of my like good friends, Aaron Nagel, who was in Link 80 and we toured with, known forever, like he does the like hyper realism stuff, and like and it's mind-blowing, amazing the work he does, but it's like the polar opposite of like what I feel like I try to do.
Yeah, you can't,
he's like really, like, he spends like months like making the nitty-gritty details like this perfect thing, and it's like some of the best art I think that's ever been created by a human being, but it's totally like different from what I try to do. So it's like, I think it's just what you're going after.
Mm-hmm.
And like I love the stuff that other people do, but I feel like I've had to like realize my own strengths and weaknesses, and it's like that kind of stuff is just not my strength. Like, and I think it's because it's not necessarily like where my brain goes, like artistically, where my brain goes inspirationally. Like when I see a piece of art that like catches my eye, it's like it's always something simple. It's something like very like just that shoots out at you, and it's just a vibe,
For sure.
And so it's like, I think that's ultimately like I've been trying to focus both with music and art on those things that like really make me happy and things that really inspire me, rather than like trying to like take on too many different directions.
For sure.
Right, dude. I think you're nailing it. Like you've been getting better and better. Like I said, I've been watching your work artistically for the last 10 years since we linked up then. And, it's amazing to see you keep going. Like I said, you're a busy guy, and like to carve out time to create things is super important and super awesome. You also, just last note, we're going to wrap it up here, but last thing I want to ask you is like the vibe that you're talking about is, I feel like what you're doing with your digital music, headphone music, and then also how you're painting is like a vibe. Like you're feeling, I could feel all those things working together. And like, is that intentional, or do you think that's just your personality coming out in the projects that you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just I think it's, again, like what I was saying, is trying to focus on like what really inspires me, what really like draws me in terms of like art, music, and any kind of media, like trying to focus on those things rather than setting goals of like going in different directions. Like I think I've never necessarily like considered myself to be like one direction of anything at all. Like I kind of just follow wherever like my brain takes me. But I think I have started lately in all aspects of art, music, and everything to at least like kind of just find out the stuff that really like speaks to me, I guess.
Yeah, that's fun for you. That speaks to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that with the music, like if the music does kind of go with the art, like maybe it's coincidental, or maybe it is that it's all kind of coming from the same place inside me. Either way, it's all, unintentionally intentional in the way that I am trying to focus on the stuff that like really like makes me happy and feels good to like get out and express.
Yeah, hell
yeah, dude. Yeah, that rules. Well, man, we're about at time right now.
Before we go, I have to ask, any new music in the pipeline? Anything fun coming out with RX or Sounds of Animals or Technology or any of the multiple projects?
Well, RX is working on new music. We are trying to figure out if like how it will be released, whether we want to like save up for an album or if we want to try and do some singles or an EP. Sound of Animals, we've talked about doing some other stuff, but we haven't started yet. Sound of Animals is usually very spur of the moment. So it's
Sure.
like when it happens, it's like, all right, guys, let's go, and then it's done. So it's never like planned, really. It's like
No overthinking.
Yeah.
It's perfect for you, bro.
When all the kids can get together.
yeah. Well, and that is one of the things that I think that's kind of magical about Sound of Animals. Like it is that kind of like it is like we've always called it an art project, even though it's a music project, because it is done in that way. Like there's never been a plan with that band. It's just we just say go and then we go and then it's done. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That
for
rules.
sure. Well, that was like the first few shows you guys played as Sounds of Animals Fighting. You had like the masks on. It was all the different animals, farm animals or whatever on that first show. That was an art piece, man.
Or
there
the
was like
people in all
projectors
black
going
with, like,
on.
frames and
that
stuff,
totally
yeah.
was an art experience.
I think Aaron Nagel was painting at all those shows too, like in the beginning, wasn't
Yeah.
he? Yeah.
That's right. He was. Yeah.
Trip. Yeah, man.
What a trip, dude. Well, I know we could sit here and talk for hours, man, but we will not take up your time just fanboying out with you. But I appreciate your time and opening up and letting everybody get to see a little bit different side of you than they may have known from just music and art.
Well, thank you guys for having me. It's been a pleasure talking art. I've talked music many times. I don't often get to talk about my art, so.
Oh yeah, man.
Dude, well, we'll have you. Welcome to have you on. Talk about any more art that you want to put in people's face, man. It was great talking about the process and stuff.
Yeah, well, thank you guys.
Oh yeah, man.
You have any websites, Instagrams, links, bands, or anything you want to shout out, or where people can find your artwork and purchase it and stuff?
I mean, I think most of my links are on my Tsagak Instagram page.
Okay, we'll make sure we link that.
Yeah, I think it's just the Tsagak official. I think everything should be linked through there. I might need to check and update it, but I mean, I haven't recently kept up on a lot of stuff. And my my Etsy page, like I do always update that with all new art, but it's just Tsagakis. I don't know. I don't even know what the actual
link
page.
Well, I'll find it.
Yeah,
I'll make sure it's in the description.
Yeah.
I got you.
But I mean, most of my stuff is either under Tsagak or Tsagakis. So, you know.
Cool, man.
Right
well,
on. Yeah.
Look forward to like checking all the new workout, and new music means new tours, means me in the mosh pit. It'll be very fun.
Yeah, looking
man.
forward to it.
Give me
Sure.
1 second. Let me do this little outro, and I'll talk to you some more. This has been another episode of the Rat Nest Podcast. You can catch us every week on YouTube for video and anywhere you stream your podcast for the audio. Please go to ratneststickerco.com, purchase prints, zines, comics, shirts, stickers, everything. Jim, am I missing anything?
Nope.
All right, bye. We'll see you next week.